What's up, everybody? TGIF, am I right? Welcome to DraftKings is The Sweat. I'm steering the ship solo tonight, as you can see, but there will be special appearances from all kinds of guests, covering everything from tennis to soccer, but baseball is where we start. DK Live's Steve Buchanan and Matt LaMarca of the Action Network are here to play MLB Splurge or Save. Basically, do you want to pay up for a pricey player or save with a cheaper option? Pretty simple. So, Steve, Jacob deGrom is tonight's most expensive pitcher at 11-2 when he faces the Braves. But if you can't afford that, Anibal Sanchez could be a good option. He's facing the Detroit offense. It is only 7,400. Do you want to pay up for deGrom? Do you think he's worth the price, or would you give Sanchez a shot? Because, I mean, almost all of Sanchez's issues in 2019 have stemmed from left-handed hitters, and Detroit is very right-handed.
Yeah, so I don't mind going with Sanchez here. I mean, you look at the matchup for deGrom against the Braves. I mean, they're a tough team, and deGrom's facing them for the third time already this season. He's had one good start, one bad start. But you look at Detroit at home against right-handed pitching, it's just so bad. 275 WOBA, 128 isolated power. I mean, they're one of the worst in the league. When you look at those stats and compare them to some of the other teams in the league, they're right in the realm with the Marlins and the Giants. So I just feel like deGrom is too expensive with the Coors Field game on tap this for tonight. They have the Dodgers have an implied total of 7.5 runs. Obviously, it's a game you want to try to get some exposure to. So Sanchez helps you, allows you basically to get some exposure there.
Matt, where are you going on this one? Do you want to pay up for deGrom or give Sanchez a chance here?
Yeah, I mean, I can't fault anybody that wants to pay up for deGrom. He's the most consistent pitcher in fantasy, 2 earned runs or fewer in 10 of his past 11 starts. But like Steve said, this is a day where you're going to need to target Coors Field. He said you want some exposure. I want all of the exposure to Coors Field, particularly the Dodgers. And that means that deGrom is just going to be out of my price range tonight. And Sanchez, for what it's worth, is in a great spot. Steve mentioned the numbers. And if you look just by fantasy expectation and fantasy points, they have been the most friendly team to target with right-handed pitchers this season. Pitchers have averaged 5.42 points above expectation versus the Tigers, which is the best mark in the league. So I think that it's a great night to save some money at pitcher and then just load up on those Dodger bats.
Just real quick, just to play devil's advocate here, deGrom's probably going to have some really, really low ownership. So if you're looking at a tournament, if you're looking to fade Coors Field, I mean, deGrom would definitely be the play here because everyone's going to be shying away from him because they just simply can't afford him. So in tournaments, I think he's actually an excellent play, but, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's still Sanchez.
All right, guys, well, at third base, Anthony Rendon leads the pricing at 5,200 against the Tigers. Or you could save with Scott Kingery, who will lead off for the first time this season and is just 4,400 against the Marlins. So, Matt, are you splurging on Rendon or are you going to save with Kingery?
Yeah, this one's easy for me. Give me Scott Kingery. I actually think he's the better play in general, and we're getting him for a lower salary. Kingery has been awesome since he's moved to the leadoff spot for the Phillies. Average of 11 DK points per game over the past 4 contests. He's scored at least 16 DK points in 2 of those games. And if you look at his StatCast data from the past 15 days, he's just raking right now. 55% hard hit rate, 95 mile an hour exit velocity, and he's hitting the ball in the air, 47% fly ball rate. So those are all good things for fantasy. I think that this one for sure is where you want to pay down.
Steve, what do you think? You going to go with Kingery too?
No, I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to go with Rendon here. I mean, look, when there's a guy you want to have when they're going against left-handed pitching, he's one of those guys. 434 WOBA, 339 isolated power against lefties this season. And Daniel Norris has not been pitching well for the Tigers. I actually think the Nationals are one of the best stacks on this slate, aside from getting the Dodgers in Coors Field. Norris has just looked so bad, especially this month. He hasn't been good at home. And now we're getting a Nationals team that is one of the best in the league against lefties. They're in American League ballpark, so they get the benefit of using the DH. I think this is such a bad spot for Norris overall. So if I'm stacking the Nationals, Rendon's definitely one of those anchors that I'm putting in my lineup. So I think it's definitely him.
Well, at shortstop, Fernando Tatis Jr. leads the pricing, and it's really no wonder why. He's had 3 consecutive games with at least 20 DK fantasy points. Tonight, he's going to cost you $5,600 against the Cardinals, but if you can't afford that, you could always look to Jorge Polanco, who's $1,000 cheaper against the White Sox. Steve, where are you going on this one?
Yeah, this is a pretty easy one. It's definitely going to be Tatis. And look, Polanco just has no power against lefties. There's a .086 isolated power against him this season. I mean, that's almost as bad as you can get. So it's Tatis by default really here, but it's not like his numbers are bad. He's got a 390 WOBA against him, 265 isolated power against righties. He's very, very expensive. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I'm probably not taking either one of these guys with some of the other options on this slate, but if you're choosing between these two, it's definitely Tatis Jr.
Matt, do you agree that because of the matchup, you just got to stay away from Polanco?
I'd rather go with him than Tatis. I mean, the real answer, like Steve said, is that I'm not playing either of these guys. But in my opinion, you just cannot pay $5,600 for someone who doesn't play at Coors Field tonight. I just don't see as much upside with Tatis compared to a guy like Chris Taylor, who I can get for $200 less. Taylor had 4 hits last night. He's red hot right now. I'd rather go with him if I'm paying up at shortstop. So I guess by default, I will take Polanco as the answer to this question.
All right, guys. Well, Christian Yelich is one of the most expensive outfielders tonight. He's $5,900 against the Pirates. But if you don't have room on your roster, you could go with Alex Verdugo, who's $4,900 against the Rockies. So, Matt, are you paying up for Yelich, or are you going to take the guy who's at Coors Field?
Jesse, have I mentioned that I like the Dodgers tonight?
I've heard that a couple times, I think.
I'm going with Alex Verdugo here. I think he's one of the best pure values on the whole slate at $4,900. He's taking on Antonio Senzatella for the Rockies. And if you look at what he has done at Coors, he has just been destroyed by left-handed bats, 409 WOBA for them this season. Verdugo has a premium spot in the batting lineup for the Dodgers. He's hitting second, but he's also the 3rd cheapest guy on the team. So to me, that's a slam dunk. You got to lock him in.
Steve, like Matt, are you just going to be looking at all the Dodgers here, stacking those guys?
I mean, you can take Christian Yelich in a average ballpark at $5,900, or you could go $6,000 and pay for Cody Bellinger. I wouldn't be. I mean, $6,000 is so much to pay up for to begin with. That I'm curious to see what the ownership on is going to be for Bellinger. But yeah, it's got to be for like Matt was saying here, at $4,900, batting second. He's going to be so popular tonight, because he's one of the cheaper guys in Coors Field tonight, if you want to call $4,900 cheap. But I just feel like this is the absolute way you have to go in this one. Christian Yelich is in a fine spot. He's one of the best hitting players in all of baseball. For $5,900 on this slate with the matchups that we have and the pitchers that we have, just doesn't make any sense to me. So it's definitely not going to be good.
Steve, really quick, it's obvious to you, but to someone who might not know, why is it a good spot for these hitters at Coors Field?
I mean, you look at the team total. The DraftKings Sportsbook has them implied at 7.5 runs. I mean, that run total is just absolutely absurd. I mean, you see some 5.5s. Occasionally you see some 6s. We very, very rarely see 7, let alone 7.5. The Rockies pitching staff has just been decimated so far, especially in the last game. These teams combined for, I think, 20 runs last night. So there's just so much to like in this matchup at Coors Field.
All right, guys, slate approved pick time. Who's your lock for the entire slate tonight, Steve?
Yeah, honestly, I'm just going to be cheap here. You got to stack the Dodgers here. I think that's the only way to go. And if you want to go a little bit, I think the National stack is in a really good spot too, and it's probably going to be at lower ownership.
Matt, I heard you like the Dodgers.
Yeah, it's the Dodgers for me. Stack them up. They're the best offensive team in the league against right-handed pitchers, playing in the best offensive environment in the league. And they're not even facing a good right-hander. They're facing a bad right-handed pitcher. So it's just a formula for a lot of runs. I get that they're going to be chalky. I hear Steve's ownership concerns. I think you eat the chalk here and you find a different way to be contrarian.
All right, good stuff, guys. Now, we got so much coming up on the Sweat. Bryan Holaday joins the program. I'm going to talk to Adam Levitan, Julian Edlow, and Pat Mayo about some interesting summer bets. Danny Graves will be here, and of course, it's Francesa Friday, so you'll get to hear what Kaufman and the Sports Pope got up to today. But first, let's get Alex Jankowski and Adam Levitan's Wimbledon picks. Hey everybody, I'm Jessie Coffield, and I am pumped right now because Wimbledon is right around the corner. Adam Levitan and Alex Jankowski are here to give their tournament picks. Let's start with the men. Novak Djokovic is the #1 seed. He won this event last year in pretty dominant fashion. Adam, do you expect him to do that again this year?
Yeah, I think the grass is pretty clearly Novak's best surface by a pretty wide margin. So I think the market has this about right. Novak plus 175 to win the tournament, Roger back at 3-1. Obviously, Roger Federer is a great grass court player as well. But any final outside of those two playing each other, I think would be a pretty big surprise to me.
Alex, Djokovic going to dominate again this year?
Yeah, it's certainly setting up like that. Like Adam mentioned, obviously Federer is still there, Nadal in the field as well. But after that second tier, you've got guys who are kind of coming off injuries, Marian Cilic, Kina Shikori, and the like, while other players like Alex Zverev, Dominic Thiem haven't really established themselves yet as grass court players. So the run up into the quarter semis finals for Djokovic looks pretty clear. So, he's deservedly so. He's a heavy favorite.
Well, Alex, those guys you just mentioned, Roger Federer is the number 2 seed with Rafael Nadal at number 3, a seed Nadal is not happy about getting. So, Alex, he's been really vocal about how unhappy he is with the seeding. Do you think Nadal will have some extra motivation because of this and thus be the better DFS play?
He's right to be upset in that, he did win the French and he's had the better season, but, you're kind of... There's not much difference there between being the 2 seed and being the 3 seed. They're likely going to face each other in the semifinals regardless. There's no home court advantage here. So, I don't really think it's going to add any necessary motivation for him. I would still lean Federer on the grass. Obviously would lean Nadal on the clay, but given the surface, I still like Federer, and I think then through that, he is the better 2 seed.
Levy, you think Nadal might have a little extra motivation here?
Come on with this clown stuff. Wimbledon is allowed to seed players however they want. They seed players based on their grass court play, and you could never make an argument that Rafael Nadal should be seeded higher than Roger on grass. It's just ridiculous. So yeah, I think the seeding is right. Wimbledon's allowed to seed players just for grass, and Nadal, it is what it is. I don't think there's going to be any motivation for him. He knows he's a dog against Roger and Novak on grass, and he's going to play hard because he always plays incredibly hard. It just is not as effective on grass as it is on clay.
Adam, who's a lower seeded player on the men's side that you think will be worth rostering?
Yeah, so in DFS, I think people a lot of times are looking for super sneaky plays, guys that are plus 200 or plus 300 to win their matches, and it's really hard to find 6 of those guys to play together. I think when we're looking for DFS guys, we're looking for guys who can win and win big and hit a lot of aces. We're looking for that ace bonus, particularly on the men's side. So there's guys like Milos Raonic, like John Isner, like Kyle Edmund, like Denis Shapovalov. All these guys have huge serves, and when they win and when they're able to break, they can win matches 6-2, 6-2, 6-3, and stuff like that. And that's how you win in DFS. It's not by finding guys who lose in 5 sets or who can grind out, 7-5 and 7-6 sets. We need to win, and we need to win big if we're going to win in GPPs.
Janko, a lower seeded guy on the men's side you think will be worth rostering?
I'm looking at a guy, he's seeded 7th, but he's the number 1 seed as far as best name in the tournament, and that is Stefanos Tsitsipas, a teenager who, I've watched him for a couple years now. He just keeps getting better, and he really has the game that works well on grass. He plays an all-around game. He doesn't mind going to the net, winning points there, and, when you advance in the tournament and move forward, and he's going to face guys like, Federer, who is more than content to stand at the baseline and just beat you to death from a strategy and angles perspective. Tsitsipas is a guy that I like to maybe kind of ruffle some feathers, get up to the net, and maybe score a couple upsets later on in the tournament.
Moving to the women here, 23-year-old Ashley Barty is the number 1 seed. She was defeated in the 3rd round last year. Alex, do you think she'll be a good play this year?
I think she's going to have a good tournament. We kind of see this a lot more in the women's games where certain players are just going to come through on a hot streak for a season. We saw with Angelique Kerber a couple of years ago, Naomi Osaka kind of the end 2 years ago and the beginning of this year. And Barty's played well. It played well in her home tournament in Australia and then followed it up at the French. And, a harder hitting player, which can struggle a bit on grass, but, there's no doubt she's coming in with good form.
Levy, do you think Barty's a good play this year?
Yeah, this woman just comes out of nowhere and just sets the tour absolutely on fire, winning just an insane amount of matches. And then I thought she would struggle coming off the French, put so much emotion, so much effort into the French. Then she goes right off the clay onto grass, onto Birmingham for the warm-up event and wins that too without dropping a set with a lot of good wins. Julia Gorgeous beat Venus Williams, beat Donna Vicic easily. So yeah, Ash Barty has done nothing but impress all year. It's hard for me to see her sustaining for the entire year and just winning and winning and winning and winning. I think her price is probably a little bit too short in the futures market. I believe she's around plus 475, but man, it's hard to doubt her. She's just on such a hot streak, as Alex said.
Well, Angelique Kerber took down Serena Williams in last year's final. This year, she's ranked 5th. Meanwhile, Serena, who has won this event 7 times, is ranked 11th. Adam, who do you think will be the better DFS player this year?
Yeah, a lot of the lines in DFS on DraftKings correlate to, a lot of the salaries on DraftKings correlate to the lines that you find in the sportsbook. And of course, Serena's lines are always going to be inflated because people love Serena. People want to bet Serena. So I think typically speaking, Kerber would be the better play. But when Serena is right, she can really blow other women off the court with her power, particularly on grass. And when that happens, we see 6-0, 6-1. We get the clean set bonus and all these points that are so important in DFS. So, it's close. I think that for Serena, for upside, I'm willing to eat a little bit of an inflated price on her.
Alex, who do you think is going to be the better DFS player?
I'd have to agree with Levy there that Serena's the better DFS play simply because she can put up those lopsided scores. Even when Kerber is on her game, she doesn't bring a lot of power, so it's a lot of breaking serve. She's going to get broken herself as well, and that just lends itself to more of those 3-set, grind-it-out type matches. She's playing well right now. I actually watched her this morning against Simona Halep, looked really good. So maybe I would pick her over Serena Williams if they're going head-to-head, but that's not going to be the case for a little bit now down the road. So right now, Serena Williams certainly brings more upside from a DFS perspective.
Finally, Alex, which lower-seeded player on the women's side do you think will be worth rostering?
What I love about the women's bracket is it can always be such a wild card. You have no idea, who's going to win in any given match. So I'll go pretty far down. 25th seed Amanda Anisimova, 17-year-old American, another player like Barty who's come out of nowhere. I mean, she was a really highly regarded, prospect, but is, paying early dividends right off the bat. She, made a run to the quarterfinals in the French, lost to Barty in a pretty close match. So defeated some pretty good players on the way as well. So, why not go with the young gun there to make another run here at Wimbledon?
Adam, who are you taking?
Yeah, I'm excited for Anisimova. I think in a few years she's going to be for sure in the top 5 in the world. When we go down in seeds, I'm looking for women who can blow their opponent off the court. I think Sloane Stephens comes to mind, wildly inconsistent play, but when she's right, can really win big. Belinda Bencic has long been one of my favorite players on the women's side. Excellent in terms of breaking serve. Mental game is really strong. We saw Garbine Muguruza win this tournament a while ago, and she's been all over the map of late, but we know that this is her best surface by a wide margin. She can certainly blow other girls off the court too. So I'm just looking for girls who I think can win 6-2, 6-love, 6-1, 6-1, and those are likely going to be power players.
Thanks, guys. And while you're waiting for Wimbledon to start, check out the Showtime Sports documentary film 100% Julian Edelman. It's an imaginative look inside Edelman's underdog journey from major injury and NFL suspension to Super Bowl MVP in 2019, with narration by Michael Rappaport and original conversations with everyone from Mark Wahlberg to Snoop Dogg, Tom Brady, Michael Strahan, and Deion Sanders. 100% Julian Edelman premieres tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Pacific on Showtime.
Growing up in the Edelman household was flat out crazy.
Frank was rough.
It was abusive.
Everything's about football, and then all of a sudden, hey Dad, I'm sorry.
You f***ed up.
We're losing games. Get back, for God's sake.
I would never bet against a guy like Jules.
Listen, I can't stand the New England Patriots,
What?
but everybody loves Julian Edelman. 100% documentary about Julian Edelman on Showtime.
Welcome to the Price Check. I'm Pierce Dietrich. Let's look at the salaries for Chicago, whose salary jumped up this week. Alex Bowman, $7,500 up to $8,700. But if you look at the last 3 months, he's one of the hottest drivers in NASCAR. He has the 5th highest driver rating over that span. Kyle Busch, $10,400 up to $11,500. Hard for him to pay off at that price. Look at Pocono. Same price, fewer laps. He was in the optimal lineup. Kyle Larson, $8,500 up to $9,500. He was amazing at Chicago last year, but the racing is different this season. Whose salary dropped this week? Daniel Suarez, $8,700 down to $7,400. He's too cheap. He's going to be optimal again, and that will make 9 times in the last 10 races he's in the optimal lineup. Daniel Hemrick, $7,600 down to $6,300. What's his average finish over the last 5 races? Think about it. It's 16th. That's not bad, but be careful with that stat. The last 5 races have been kind of weird. Chris Buescher, 7,800 down to 6,800. Throw out Sonoma. Let's look at the last 3 races, Michigan, Pocono, and Charlotte. He was in the optimal lineup in every single one of those races. Favorite play of the week, Martin Truex Jr., 10,900. He wins every single week. He looks like he did in his championship season. And in that 2017 season, at this point, he had only had 2 wins. He's got 4 wins this year. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., 7,100. I said it before. This package suits Stenhouse. At the 1.5-mile tracks, he's averaging an 11th place finish. All right, guys, check out the DK Playbook for your DFS information and needs. If you have NASCAR questions, hit me up on Twitter at @RaceForThePrize. I'm Pierce Dietrich. Catch me on DK Live.
Joined here by Marlins catcher Bryan Holaday. Bryan, thank you for the time.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, you've been around the block a little bit. You've experienced a number of different clubhouses. You've been with the Tigers, the Rangers, my beloved Red Sox, now the Marlins as well. What stands out to you about this Miami squad?
Yeah, every locker room's a little bit different, but this one, surrounded by so many young guys and, a lot of guys coming up and down, a lot of guys making their debuts. And if we don't have the youngest starting pitching staff, I'd be pretty shocked. But I think just kind of like the hope and optimism that brings and just kind of the energy day in, day out that these guys have, it's great to see.
Does that make you feel like an old guy or something?
I think it keeps me young.
Yeah, there you go. Keeps you on your toes. Now, you're from Dallas, Texas. I guess I could just go to Google with this, but what the heck, you're here. Which is the hotter city, Dallas or Miami?
Are you talking temperature-wise?
Well, I don't know. Which is more, how else would you interpret it? Why don't we start there?
Well, I think if you're going to go, hotter city, I think Miami. But temperature-wise, I'm definitely going to go Dallas. Dallas gets way hotter, and you don't have that constant airflow. It gets a little stagnant. So Dallas can get hotter for sure.
Just got more humidity in Miami, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't want to deal with that. Hey, I saw on Twitter that your team had a ping pong tournament back in spring training. What was that like?
Oh, that was a lot of fun. It's a really good competition. Garrett Cooper ended up taking it home. He actually shocked a lot of people. We didn't know the big guy could move like that.
Real nimble.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I put up a good fight. I got a couple wins under my belt, but then Coop knocked me out. So yeah, luckily he won it all, so it made me feel better.
How many rounds were there?
Oh man, it was a full house. Like everybody in the locker room competed for it. So it was a long tournament.
What was the prize? Is it just bragging rights, or did you guys have a little extra?
Yeah, we put together a little cash prize. Everybody pitched in a little bit, so it made it worth our time.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to motivate you in some way.
Absolutely.
Hey, you played in the College World Series back in 2010. Probably feels like a lifetime ago with TCU, but what's your favorite memory from your college baseball days?
Ooh, man, I got a ton of them. But if I had to narrow it down to one, I would have to say dogpiling on the Longhorn in the 2010 Super Regional.
Okay.
We went down to UT and we ended up beating them in that third game to go to the first ever College World Series in TCU history, and we took it out to center field and dogpiled on their Longhorn. I'm sure they're not too happy about it, but that was definitely probably the highlight of my career.
You think they still talk about it all these years later?
I know some people definitely do. I got a couple buddies, that played there, so that it's a sour subject for sure.
How personally do guys take? What was the equivalent, I guess, for your school if you guys lost a big game or in a tournament, whatever it may have been, that you guys just would not have responded well to that?
That definitely is up there. Like I would not have responded well if somebody did that on our home field. But it was just a big moment in TCU history, so I'm glad we did it, and it was fun for sure.
You began this season before coming to Miami, AAA New Orleans, the Baby Cakes, which evidently is the real name of a team. What's the funniest minor league team name in your opinion, either that you're encountered or I guess that you played for?
Yeah, the Baby Cakes is definitely up there. It's a pretty unique name, and it's always funny when you have to explain to somebody, I play for the Baby Cakes, and then you gotta fill them all in on that whole history. So that's definitely up there. I think the El Paso Chihuahuas is a good one too. It's a real intimidating name right there. And then I've always been a fan of the Montgomery Biscuits.
There you go. That's another good one. 3. Do you collect your jerseys? Do you save those?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think it's one of the really cool parts about this game. I definitely try to collect the jersey from every team I've played for, even if in minor leagues up to the big leagues.
So does that mean you have a framed Baby Cakes jersey in your house somewhere?
Not yet, but it'll be framed for sure.
Sometime down the road. When you play, of course, naturally, one of the things I really like about baseball, and it's not really, it's a baseball thing, but doesn't have anything to do with the actual sport, is that you guys get to have a walk-up song when you're coming to the plate. How did you pick your walk-up song? Because I feel like that would take a long time to really narrow down.
No, you're right. It does, and it's a tough decision, man. It's a big decision. So, it's like the whole off season. I'll go like I'll get really high on a song, and I'll really want to pick that one, and then I'm going back and forth as to if it sounds good or what part I should use. And so me and my brother always debate on it a lot because he always thinks he can pick the best one. So he always picks one for me, and then my wife tries to pick one for me, and then now my son's trying to pick him for me. So it's a challenge for sure to come up with one. What is it right now? So currently right now it is Holiday Inn by Chingy. Okay. And it started as a joke, and I was like, I'm just going to do it for one game. And then I had a good game. So I guess I got to keep it rolling. I'm going to keep going with it for right now.
You want to sing the chorus of that for us or anything?
I'll pass on that.
How often can you just change it up whenever you feel like it, or there are rules to having walk-up songs?
No, everybody's different. We got Miguel Rojas, who I think he has 5 or 6 different songs. Every time he goes to the plate, it's a different one. And he definitely goes with the popular song. I think he tries to get some cheap thrills, tries to get the crowd going by whatever's hot. But then, some guys, they'll have the same one, and then if they don't get a hit, then they'll have them switch it and all that stuff. So it's definitely a lot going on with the walkout song.
You can tell I'm fascinated by this, obviously. Another thing I'm interested about as it pertains to the Marlins, it's got to be really unique when your CEO is Derek Jeter, a guy that had so much success throughout his playing career and is just an iconic figure, a Hall of Fame guy. What's that like? How much interaction do you have with him?
We actually have a ton of interaction with him, and I mean, it is awesome. Like it's great having a guy like that around. Obviously, just the icon that he is. And I'm one of the few guys left that actually got to play against him. So, he's taken a couple hits away from me. So I still remember that. But, it's unbelievably cool to have him in the locker room day in, day out, to have him in the stands, and to just, have him behind the cage when you're taking BP, to be able to kind of pick his brain a little bit and ask him, how he would prepare and stuff like that. And he is, such a great guy, and he's very open about everything, and he's so easy to talk to that, it makes all that so much easier to do. And it's just, I think it's the coolest thing in the world to have a guy like that around.
You ever bust his chops about the fact that he did take a couple hits away from you? Because that would bug me, I think.
Oh, it does. Every time I see him, it kind of brings back a little memory. So I definitely won't let him hear the end of it.
Here at DraftKings, we like to give out awards for the best fantasy players, naturally, in each sport. And now that we're at the midpoint of the baseball season, who would you nominate for this season's DraftKings Fantasy Baseball MVP? Who's really impressed you?
Man, I'd say right now it's got to be a toss-up between Bellinger and Yelich. I'm going to have to go with Yelich just because he's got a couple more homers. I know he's got some stolen bases. I know all that stuff matters, especially to the DraftKings community. So, I think I would go with him if I had to choose right now.
Bryan Holaday, you can find him at the Holiday Inn. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Just because it's summer doesn't mean the action slows down. Time to go over some summer bets here on The Sweat. Let's bring in our analysts, Adam Levitan, Julian Edlow, and Pat Mayo. So we're going to start with tennis. Adam Levitan, that's your specialty. Wimbledon is just around the corner. Now on the men's side, you have 3 guys as favorites. Novak Djokovic at plus 160, Roger Federer plus 300, and Rafael Nadal at plus 550. But is there anyone else you have your eye on heading into the tourney?
Yeah, so I think you're going to need injury or something really fluky to not have one of those 3 guys win. I mean, tennis is not a sport like golf or something where you have 100-to-1 shots coming in majors, particularly when you're playing best 3 out of 5 sets. You just have the cream rise to the top so often. That said, you do get some long odds and some very, very talented players. I think Stan Wawrinka showed at the French Open he still has some gas in the tank. He's 80-to-1. Milos Raonic, the Canadian, huge serve. That's really what you're looking for at Wimbledon. Huge serves and a lot of good net play. Milos Raonic, 40-to-1. And then Nick Kyrgios, I don't know if he's partying, if he's out all night, if he's women. I don't know what Nick Kyrgios is doing, but if he has his head on straight, He's really, really, really good on grass, and he's 40-1.
On the women's side, Ashley Barty is favored at plus 475, but Serena is second at plus 600. Can Serena pull off her 8th Wimbledon title and her 3rd in her last 5 years?
Yeah, 6-1 is not right on Serena, and similar to what we see with Tiger Woods in golf. I mean, it's just not the right line. It's inflated due to the name that everybody knows, and everybody wants to bet on Tiger. Everybody wants to bet on Serena. Serena's 37 years old, has looked really lost, particularly in the French Open during clay season. Didn't play any warm-up events for this Wimbledon, so she comes into grass cold, very not Serena-esque, I would say. So I think 6-1 is probably a little bit too short on Serena.
Well, Serena is actually the favorite for the U.S. Open, which comes along in August. If you could only pick one of these bets for Serena, do you like her better at Wimbledon or in the U.S. Open?
Yeah, I think U.S. Open is a place where she thrives on the crowd, and playing in New York and playing at night and playing in her home country, I think can go a long way toward bringing her the energy that she needs. So to me, Serena would be a much better bet at the U.S. Open.
Time to talk golf now. Our resident expert, Pat Mayo, is here to guide us. So, Pat, the Open Championship hits in late July with Brooks Koepka sitting as the current favorite at plus 700. Do you like him in that spot?
No, there are very few golfers that I would ever really consider at anything really less than 20-1 when it comes to overall win equity. Brooks is probably the best of the favorites. He has the experience coming up on the Challenger Tour in Europe, playing on the European Tour, and the fact that he's come first or second at every major so far this season. And no one has actually ever finished first or second, one of the two at least, in all 4 majors. Not even peak Tiger Woods could do that. So expecting a bit of a drop-off from Brooks might be the thing, but of all of the majors in golf where this is being played in Portrush, right on the Irish Sea, it's really difficult to really get out ahead of any of these future bets in terms of golf at the British Open, mainly because we need to know what the weather is going to be like. At no other tournament on the calendar can one wave be affected so much, and we're not going to know that until the week of, or maybe even the day before. So that number is not getting any worse. If you want to bet Brooks at 7-1 when the time comes, he's in the good wave, and you have all the feels for him that he's going to come through. But these are the same odds that he's getting at the Travelers Championship when he's not playing against the best players in the world.
Well, speaking of Tiger, he is plus 1,200 for that tournament. Would you take a chance on Tiger to win his 4th Open Championship?
No, almost to allude to what Levitan said before when it comes to betting Serena, you're just eating so much of the public when you see this number. 12-1 is fine. Tiger can win. He should be listed as one of the favorites, but his realistic odds should be like 25-1, not 12-1. And when we saw him win the Masters, he was overvalued at the Masters, but hey, he ended up winning. So it really didn't matter to win 2 majors in 1 year at his advanced age, especially because let's say the weather turns a little bit towards the cold. We saw this at Pebble Beach. Tiger's back does not function well in subpar conditions. He almost needs optimal conditions right now. Hot weather to get loosened up. You start throwing a wrench in, whether it be a weather delay, whether it be a bit of cold weather, he has to go out and wear a toque. That is not the situation that I want to see Tiger Woods in.
All right, gentlemen, it's time to talk football, and we need all 3 of you for that: Adam Levitan, Julian Edlow, and Pat Mayo. So as you're waiting for football season to get here, you can still place some future bets. Patrick Mahomes at plus 500 and Tom Brady at plus 800 are the 2 favorites for NFL MVP. In fact, the 14 players with the best odds are all quarterbacks. The best odds for a non-QB are Todd Gurley at 3,300. So do you like any non-QBs for the MVP here, Adam?
Yeah, I think one way to look at these MVP votes and all these other awards voting is think about who's voting for them. And a lot of these guys that have votes for the MVP are just these old donkeys who still think that running backs matter. That said, 11 out of the last 12 MVPs have been quarterbacks. So you're really taking the worst of it here when you don't go with a quarterback. That said, I could see these old kind of writers vote for Ezekiel Elliott. He's going to touch the ball 25 times a game. He's going to get a lot of 1-yard rushing touchdowns. The Cowboys are so run heavy when they get inside the 5-yard line. So if the Cowboys are good, if that Zeke can rack up 25 touchdowns or something like that, I could see a lot of these writers actually tricking themselves into thinking that Ezekiel Elliott is actually the most valuable player. 40-1 is probably a little bit short, but I think it's okay.
Jules, do you like any non-quarterbacks for the MVP?
Yeah, I think Zeke Elliott would probably be my second guy if I'm going non-quarterback, and the guy I'm looking at is Alvin Kamara at plus 5,000. You get a little bit more money on Kamara. He's in that explosive offense in New Orleans. He runs the ball very well, but he's a huge part of that passing game. And then with Mark Ingram going to Baltimore, he should be more featured in that backfield, which is something that the Saints have held him back from a little bit in his career. But we saw with Mark Ingram suspended for the first 4 games of last season how dominant Kamara was, putting up those monster games on DraftKings. So Alvin Kamara being the feature guy at plus 5,000 in one of the highest powered offenses in the NFL, that one has my eye if you're going to go with a non-quarterback, which is a risk to begin with, like Adam just said.
Pat, you looking at any non-QBs?
No, not really. In the past 20 years, only 4 non-quarterbacks have won NFL MVP. Marshall Faulk, Sean Alexander, LaDainian Tomlinson, and Adrian Peterson. And those were such huge outlier seasons that it's possible. And I think the guys that Levy and Jules bring up are the guys to do it. Elliott is clearly the one isolated from the rest because Dallas can be a good team. Dallas is a very public team. People like to vote for Cowboys. And if he ends up scoring 20-plus touchdowns and rushes for close to 2,000 yards, he could definitely win that. Barkley would be the other one just because of the volume that you're going to get. But if you can't sniff around 2,000 yards or break the touchdown record, there's no chance you're going to win MVP. So unless you think that Arizona has a bounce back season, and that's all because of David Johnson, and he ends up with 24 touchdowns and 2,400 combined yards, yeah, that's on the table. That's also like a 99.9th percentile outcome, which just isn't going to happen.
Well, every year some team in the NFL recovers from a disastrous season to make the playoffs. The Browns have made the most strides and are minus 124 to make the playoffs this year, but some other candidates to make the postseason after missing last year include the Packers, 49ers, Bills, and Lions. Pat, do you like any of those other plays, or do you like another non-playoff team from 2018?
I think the Packers make the most sense, but you're getting close to even odds on that. So I'm just going to scrape that one right off the page. I'm going to look at the 49ers here solely because Arizona's, they're on the up and coming, but they're probably not going to be a playoff team this season. We saw what happened to the Rams towards the end of last season. I know they ended up making the Super Bowl, but there's a blueprint on how to slow them down a little bit. So maybe they're not quite as dominant as they were in the first half of the season last year. Maybe they regress a little bit. Maybe somehow they miss the playoffs. They're probably still pretty likely. And in Seattle, you just have such a backwards game plan with what they're trying to do. So if they're not living on the fringes as outliers, being able to effectively control the clock, if their defense doesn't play up to snuff like it did a year ago, and it shouldn't because they've lost a lot of guys, and Russell Wilson just isn't out of this world amazing, with Jimmy Garoppolo returning at plus 215, over 2-1 on your money, it does seem like the 49ers have gotten better. They've addressed a lot of needs, and they got that high-end draft pick in a year that they were supposed to be good, yet weren't. So it really helps them bolster a lot of these guys coming back from injury. Year 2 of Kyle Shanahan, I think that makes a lot of sense. The best bet on the board is the Niners.
Pat has me convinced. Julian, who are you looking at?
Yeah, I mean, the Browns are obviously the sexy pick, but you have to lay some juice there on them. So in terms of plus money teams to make the postseason, I do agree with Mayo on the Packers at plus 115. They're kind of the obvious one. We hope that Aaron Rodgers can kind of maybe not be the MVP that he once was, but return to form a little bit more. And maybe the Bears regress a little bit and the Packers win that division, or they sneak in for one of the wild cards. I will say, I don't mind the 49ers at the money that they're at. They're at plus 215. That's a really good number. I will say, though, Seattle at plus 122. Russell Wilson, as Pat said, he's not the most amazing quarterback in the world, but I still think that he's the best quarterback in that division, the best winner in that division. So Seattle at plus 122 is a team that I think you can get plus odds on making the playoffs that I like a little bit there.
Adam, who are you looking at for this?
Yeah, I think the Bills are an interesting one. I think the Bills will undoubtedly have a top 3 defense this season. And if you just get a little bit of play from Josh Allen, they have a really good chance to make the playoffs. But I think in terms of safest bet, you want to return your money, I think it's the Vikings. And nobody brought them up. Everybody's excited about the Packers. I know people are excited about the Bears. I think the Bears ran really hot last year, got really lucky. You can't sustain turnover differential like they did. In terms of talent from top to bottom of the roster of teams that did not make the playoffs last year, you could argue one is the Browns, but I think 2 is the Vikings. I mean, the Vikings are absolutely loaded on offense and on defense. Just so much talent on both sides of the ball. So I think they can get it together this year and make the playoffs, and I believe you can get about plus 135 on them.
That's it from our experts. Happy betting this summer, folks.
you could almost make a case that Michael Thomas is just sitting there by himself.
Yeah, I'm going to have Michael Thomas at number 3. That's the way that I had it in my initial rankings. I want to get confirmation. I need confirmation bias on this stuff, Jake. I can't just be out freewheeling on my own. I've tried that for years. Not always a great success. But if we do play, let's play the Negatron game against all these guys. What would be if we make a pros column and a cons column for these like next 7 wide receivers? Let's throw out the pro column. We basically know what the pros are. The pros are they could all be the number 1 overall wide receiver. We know that. Right. What's the con to Michael Thomas? That the touchdowns don't end up materializing because there's just too many mouths to feed. He's going to get his receptions, but maybe we saw the peak of his target total last year.
No, I think the only negative I could even think of, and that's why he's kind of by himself, in my opinion, is if Drew Brees declines. Like Drew Brees has already started passing a little bit less. Maybe he goes back to even 2 years ago where the touchdown total was even poor. That's my only concern. It's not even Michael Thomas. It's just if Drew Brees takes another step back and they go even more run heavy, which I don't really think they would. But again, you want a negative, and that's what I'm saying is I think Michael Thomas is the safest outside the top 2.
All right, so we talk about Beckham. We know that he's a bit of a diva. If he doesn't start getting the ball right away, he might freak out a little bit. He has dealt with injury history. No. He is with a brand new team, although the situation upgrade does seem like it could negate a lot of that stuff. But right. I don't know. I don't necessarily find him to be risky, but I don't have a good feel for Beckham in Cleveland. So there's a bit of mystery there for me. I guess that would be my negative, is that I don't really know what his range of outcomes are. I know what the high end is, that he's the best receiver in the league. But I don't know what his floor is compared to a lot of these top-end guys. I guess that would be my negative.
Well, I think the floor is he gets hurt. This has been recurring through his entire career so far. And then the other floor is he just it doesn't fit well. The personality becomes too much with him and Baker and Jarvis Landry, which isn't going to happen, but we're trying to find negatives here. Ends up leading this team and not Beckham. But if you see yesterday, I think it was Patrick Claybon, or I'm not sure, but I think it was, but he tweeted out all the incompletions of Eli Manning to Odell Beckham, and just looking at how many times he easily missed them. And a lot of it was collapsing pocket, but at the same time, there was somewhere there wasn't even any pressure, and he's just poor steps, poor throws. I think that upside, like you just said, is the Baker Mayfield to Odell Beckham has got everybody so excited. But let's be realistic. We've seen this before of saying, oh, this guy's with a new team and everything's going to be different this time. And look at all the amazing. And I know this is just the first one that came to mind. And I know is at the end of his career, so it's a little bit different. But Andre Johnson, when he went to play with Andrew Luck, and that was supposed to be like, oh, God, could you imagine what he can do now? Because he's been dealing with crap quarterbacks in Houston all this time. And sometimes it doesn't happen. Again, his was for a different reason, but it's never a guarantee to just go to a new situation that looks better on paper and definitively works out.
Time for another Francesa Friday. Adam Kaufman, Mike Francesa, host of WFAN in New York. Mike's on. And Mike, I mean, everybody right now is talking, understandably, NBA free agency. It starts Sunday night. Just big picture, what are your expectations for the big stars? Who's going where?
I think the key is, does Leonard go Clippers or Toronto? And then what do the Lakers do now that they have freed up a max contract? Is there a player worthy of that? I think it's going to be very interesting. See, they really need catch and shoot players. That's where I would be stockpiling my guys. I mean, it'd be nice to have a rim protector. It'd be nice to have a guy who does the dirty work on the boards, but they need guys who can catch and shoot. That's what it's about. But if they get a good player, it's going to be very interesting. And now they've cleared enough room for a max player, which has got to have people very nervous. But I have no idea who would be going there. To me, that's the most interesting spot of all.
See how it plays out. One guy who thought he was going to stay in Charlotte and clearly is not, that's Kemba Walker. He thought maybe he'd get that Supermax offer of about $220 million over 5 years. Michael Jordan wasn't remotely considering that because one report said that 5 for $160 is the offer. So looks like he's going to Boston based on multiple reports right now for a max contract elsewhere. That's 4 for $140. Kyrie Irving, as we've talked about, expected to leave Boston after that disappointing underachieving year for the Celtics. So is this move better for the C's?
It makes the chemistry a lot better. Kemba's a plus in that regard, but you cannot ask him to carry the team. He's not capable. This is not a knock on him. He's a second banana. He's not a lead guy. He's a second banana. I think he knows that. I think he understands.
Well, look at Charlotte. They didn't have a lot of success with him there.
No, he's not a lead guy. I mean, that's not his game. So to me, it's not a big deal. It's not a bad move, but it's not the move that's going to make you great by any stretch. When they make that move, their whole future rests on Tatum's maturity. I mean, it really does. It has to happen. But they learned that more is not more. It's just more sometimes. More is often less. And they learned that Irving was a terrible signing for them. And they already lost a real glue piece in Horford, who is an very underrated piece, a very, very underrated piece. So they have some problems there. They really do. Now, they still have some assets, but they have some problems.
This weekend, Mike, Yankees, Red Sox in London. The locals probably won't care all that much because baseball's just not that popular, I don't think, across the pond. But as a move for the sport, just taking this rivalry overseas, trying to build that awareness, that attention, all the marketing associated with it. And again, it's Red Sox, Yankees, so you'll have fans that have traveled there just to see this spectacle. Is this good for the game?
No, it's just another greedy reach by a league that is just overly greedy. They all are. The leagues, you know what? They'd kill each other bending over for the last buck. That's all it is. It's just pure greed. Plus, it's the Red Sox. Think about this. If the Red Sox finish a game and a half behind or finish a game and a half out of the wild card, they can remember the fact they gave up 2 home games here, and turned them into 2 neutral games against the Yankees. They decided to do that. They're probably making more money than they get. I'm sure they were promised more money than their regular gross receipts are for a Yankee game in Fenway. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. The Yankees refused to do it. They wouldn't give up a game. So, listen, they'll probably split the games anyway. But I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's anything to get overheated about. But to me, it's, other leagues have done it. Now we have to do it. Baseball is not an international sport. It's never been an international sport. It's not basketball. It's not soccer. And either is the NFL. I understand that. But the NFL has done okay in London. I don't think it's done great there. Most of the teams I've talked to don't even like going there. I think it is something that I would expect the teams to come back and say, yeah, we liked it. No, we don't want to do it again. That's what I would expect.
Joined now by Cincinnati Reds broadcaster, 9-year pitcher for the Reds, Danny Graves. Danny, thanks for the time.
My pleasure. I love doing this. I'm really excited about this. Been waiting for it all week.
Look, buttering me up will get you everywhere. And I know you're at the home office there. You're a pitcher. You were a pitcher. What's with the bats behind you? Shouldn't you have a whole case of baseballs or something?
Well, so it's actually an American flag made out of bats and baseballs.
Okay.
You just put balls on top probably very well, but I did get to bat a little bit. Not that I like batting, but bats and balls, that's just baseball.
You know what you did? I was going to bring that up a little later, but since you hit on it, you hit 2 home runs in your career. And as a pitcher for 11 seasons, what was that emotion like? Because obviously you're not used to seeing the ball go out of the park, at least, maybe when you're throwing it on a not so good day, but you're not used to being the one that puts it out there.
No, I'm not used to even putting it in play unless I'm bunting. I was really good at bunting. I could not hit a lick, but it was just kind of one of those things. You just run into them sometimes. The first one that I hit, I don't really remember. It was all just kind of a blur.
You blacked out, basically?
Yeah. I really did. It just, seeing the video, it's like, I don't remember doing this and doing that. But the second one I hit, I kind of enjoyed it a little bit more and didn't sprint around the bases as fast as I did the first one.
Yeah, you got to milk those situations because you never know when they're going to come again.
Exactly. But I was in shock, though, as everybody else was.
Over the course of those 11 years, mostly in Cincinnati, 9 of those seasons with the Reds, anything stick out? Do you have a favorite memory?
I think breaking the all-time saves record was pretty special to me, just for the fact that it's the Cincinnati Reds, the oldest team in baseball, the history that they had there, and to be able to be at the top of any list in the record books is pretty special for me. And of course, the season that we had in 1999 was special. 1 game away from the playoffs. I think it was the best team that I ever played on that never made it. So, there's obviously a few other things, but those 2 stand out the most.
You probably know this already, but for anyone who doesn't, you're the only Vietnamese-born player in Major League Baseball history. And we're talking about a game that obviously has, thousands upon thousands of people who have played it. Does that distinction mean something in particular to you?
It does. For the fact that not only the first one is probably going to be the only one. Baseball's not very big in Vietnam,
Sure.
still to this day. And I've been back. We've tried to promote it a little bit. The talent just isn't there. They don't have the equipment and the ability from coaches to be there, but they're trying. They're definitely trying. So I shouldn't say there'll never be another one, but I'm going to probably hold this distinct record, I guess you could say, for quite a long time. It's definitely an honor to be the first and only right now.
And you moved to the States when you were incredibly young, only 14 months old. How early did you pick up baseball, though?
So baseball was in my family. My dad loved it. He never played, but he loved watching. Huge Cardinals fan growing up. So probably when I was about 4, we started playing, just messing around. And played t-ball when I was 5 and wasn't very good. But I loved running around. I loved just the fact that there was a ball and we had to run around and chase it. So I guess ever since I was 4, I've been playing.
And during your career, you were a very versatile pitcher, 518 games. The vast majority of those came out of the bullpen. You had, as you said, all-time saves record for the Reds, so you saved a whole bunch of games. You finished double the number of those, but you're also a starter for a season, so you bounced around a little bit. How challenging was it to go back and forth, lead the team in saves one year, starter the next year, lead the team in saves the next year? What was that like?
It was kind of a bumpy road. It was definitely a challenge that I enjoyed. I wasn't very good at it. I just never really clinged to the fact of throwing 6 or 7 innings at a time. Now, the way the baseball works these days, there's a lot of starters that go 5 innings. I could do that, but I couldn't really mentally get prepared for 6 or 7 innings and facing guys more than once on the same day. My whole career, it was coming in for an inning or 2 at a time, and I generally wouldn't see guys more than once. So I could give everything I had. I wouldn't have to try to trick them their next at-bat. And the biggest thing, really, it ruined my career batting average because it had too many at-bats and I had too many strikeouts, so it really killed that. That was very discouraging.
Did you have a goal when it came to career batting average? I don't remember exactly what you were. I know you were over 100, which I recognize doesn't say much.
That was the goal, to be over 100. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Mission accomplished.
Yes, I think it was either 104 or 107, something like that. It was barely over 100. But there's a couple things I do regret as a hitter. I never hit a double and never hit a triple. I had 2 homers and 6 singles.
Yeah, so. See, I feel like if I had the talent to play baseball at any professional level to begin with, but if I were a Major League Baseball pitcher and I had the opportunity to hit, I wouldn't care if my only career hit was the home run and then the rest of the time I just struck out. Like, as long as I had that long ball and the highlight, that's all I want.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The first 2 hits that I got, they were both home runs. So if I would just shut it down.
Poor you.
But they made me hit as a starter, so it killed it.
Yeah, no, you got me there. And I guess at that point you would have been well over 100. People tend to say that closers are a bit eccentric. And again, you had more than your fair share of closing opportunities. Do you agree with that?
100%. That's saying it kindly, because I think to be a closer, you have to be eccentric. You have to be weird and just have that mindset, the mentality of, I am who I am. This is my job. I go out and throw 1 inning. If I do great, awesome. If I do bad, I'm going to go out and get it the next day. So it's a certain mentality for sure. I think being weird is a huge factor because you really learn how to forget the bad and continue to move on. But there's not many closers, I think, in the history of baseball that you could say were perfectly normal, right? I mean, everybody, they're all different. They're all eccentric in their own way, but you have to be as a bullpen guy.
Final block of the show, folks. Closing this thing down with my favorite Canadian. That'd be DK Live's Jeff Ulrich. So, Jeff, I need your picks for this weekend's showdown contest for the Rocket Mortgage Classic. Now, Cameron Champ was in the lead most of the day, but Nate Lashley has taken over first place. Lashley is 14 under, Champ is 13 under. So you think that Champ is going to stay near the top for most of the weekend? He's 7,300.
I mean, there's two ways you could think about this, I guess. I mean, Cameron Champ is a really good young player. He hits the ball really far. This is a really easy course, and he makes a ton of birdies. So the popular notion is probably, yeah, we're going to see Cameron Champ continue a little bit and challenge for the win this week. But if you do look at his stats, I mean, he's not really hitting it that well. He's T46 in approaches, 58th, and in strokes gained off the tee, and he's second in strokes gained putting. So he gained an amazing over 3.1 strokes with the putter today. I don't know if that's going to continue. That's a lot of putting. So I think it's more likely he fades off a little bit in the weekend, and probably the same with Lashley too. Whenever you see a player come out hot putting like that, especially in a tournament like this, we have to keep making birdies. There's always a chance that they fade off over the weekend. So that's probably where I would lean with Champ. I'd expect. I think you're going to probably see him fade off more than likely over the weekend.
Well, Dustin Johnson is the most expensive player at $10,500. Would you roster him for that price?
I definitely wouldn't roster Dustin Johnson, Jesse, because he missed the cut. He missed the cut. He ended up missing the cut. He's at -2. He ain't going to play the weekend. So, I mean, if you're looking to go up top, obviously, for the weekend golf, a lot of the big names missed. I mean, Gary Woodland missed too. Ricky Fowler is kind of the only big name left in this tournament. But the guy I really like personally is Patrick Reed. First in strokes gained tee to green right now. His putter has been awful. He's been the complete opposite of Cameron Champ. But he's hitting it really well, and he's third in strokes gained approach. We've seen Patrick Reed be able to get hot at an event like this before. He won the Career Builder way back when at like -30. So I really like the price on Patrick Reed, $8,900. He's coming into the weekend at -8. He's still in contention. He's only 6 shots back, and we've seen on this course how low these guys can go. I think Patrick Reed is due for a really hot putting round. I think he's going to get himself in contention. So obviously don't play Dustin Johnson because he ain't playing this weekend. But Patrick Reed, $8,900, he made the cut, and I really like him this week.
All right, so Jeff, who's a player near the top of the leaderboard that you think is going to fall off?
Yeah, so I mentioned Cameron Champ. I feel pretty much exactly the same way about Nate Lashley. The guy had an amazing putting performance in round 1. He gained over 4 strokes with the putter alone. Didn't quite. He struck the ball a little bit better today, but it was still like it was a lot of it was just putting. I think he gained a stroke putting. So both him and Cameron Champ are just been riding like these extremely hot putters the first couple rounds. And it really feels like in an event like this, a couple young guys, there's going to be a lot of pressure on them to keep making it. And like I said, off the top, you just usually don't see, that kind of continuation with the putter for 4 rounds. So I really think some of these veterans are going to put pressure on these two. And I expect both Nate Lashley and Cameron Champ to regress a little bit over the weekend. Now, look, it's highly variable tournament. It's a really easy course. This is the spot where these guys just put the lights out for 4 rounds. But if I was going to be rostering or picking someone to sort of regress over the weekend from the top, it would be Lashley first and then Cameron Champ second.
So who's a player not near the top that you think is actually worth rostering?
Yeah, so there's a couple names definitely have my eye on. I mean, lower down the leaderboard. I mentioned Patrick Reed. He'd definitely be like my top target. But a guy like Sam Burns at -7 is really interesting too. He's struck the ball extremely well over the first couple rounds. He's only at -7, but I mean he's 12th in strokes gained tee to green, 4th off the tee, 18th approach. And the thing with Sam Burns is he's traditionally one of the best putters on tour, and he's actually lost strokes with his putter over the first 2 rounds. So that's a scenario you can kind of capitalize on because, people might see him. He's only at -7. They might not think too much of him right there, but he's actually hitting the ball better than normal. He's just not putting up to his standards, but I would expect that to switch over the weekend. So Sam Burns at -7 is really interesting to me. He's actually got a pretty high birdie rate too. And then Aaron Wise, the guy I mentioned, before the tournament started, He's 4th in birdies made. He's making a ton of bogeys, but I mean, his birdie rate is off the chart right now, which is good because even if he doesn't move up the leaderboard too much, he's probably going to make you a ton of birdies for weekend golf. So I think Aaron Wise is another player you can target. He's at -6 right now.
Finally, Jeff, who do you think is going to win this?
I'm tempted to say Patrick Reed makes a huge comeback, but I'm going to go a little bit more conservative. I really like the guys at -10, Byung Hanan and Rory Sabatini. I think Rory Sabatini is going to get it done. He has been trending well all season, been making a ton of cuts. Veteran player. Like I said, I think he's going to put some pressure on these guys at the top. And when it gets down to Sunday, a guy like Rory Sabatini, he's maybe knows how to deal with the pressure a little bit better than some of these these other young players like a Nate Lashley who's up there right now. So give me some Rory Sabs to get the comeback win this weekend.
Jeff, before I let you go, do you have like a dark horse pick, perhaps? Somebody you could see coming out of the woodwork here?
Yeah, so I mentioned Patrick Reed, and obviously he's not really a dark horse because he's one of the best players left in this field. But if you want to go down further, I really do think Sam Burns is interesting. And then even just going down a little bit further, because I think you're going to see some guys put in some massive rounds over the weekend. But Cameron Smith at -6 is finally starting to play better. And, put in a 68 today. I feel like he's due for like a really low round because it's a player who's top 50 in the world. It's a really weak field. And considering he's maybe started to turn the corner, I think you could possibly see him put in a low round over the weekend. Maybe not enough to win, but if you're looking for someone weekend golf that might get you like that 64 that you need, I think Cameron Smith is definitely worth your while.
Excellent work, Jeff. That'll do it for The Sweat. I'm Jessie Coffield. The Sweat will be back Monday at 6 p.m. You can watch it YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and of course the DK Live app, which you should go download right now.